The Fox Marvel films may exist separately from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but that doesn't mean that they haven't made a significant mark on the superhero movie landscape. Now, with the Fantastic Four reboot recently crashing and burning, what better time to rank the studio's Marvel movies? One of the low points of the superhero genre, and that's saying something, this Daredevil spin-off starring Jennifer Garner barely even connects to that previous film. It's all a bore, with sketchy fight scenes and an annoying kid sidekick. Though at least they finally got the costume right. Kind of. Despite this Fantastic Four's already legendary behind-the-scenes troubles, its biggest problem might just be that these characters aren't really suited to a grounded, gritty approach. Regardless, the final product here feels exactly like what it surely is, a patched-together attempt to salvage a disastrous production. While a solo movie for Hugh Jackman's super-popular Wolverine was a no-brainer, this first attempt was a low point for the X-Men. Not only is the film story convoluted and filled with a bunch of lame, pseudo-X-Men characters, but fan favorites such as Gambit, and Deadpool in particular, are severely underserved. The biggest sin this third X-Men movie commits is its attempt to ground the epic, cosmic, classic Dark Phoenix saga from the comics. That, combined with a dispensable approach to its main characters, some occasionally shoddy effects work, and again, a ton of random mutants that the audience has no vested interest in, makes for an underwhelming trip to the X-Mansion. Before the great Netflix show based on Old Hornhead, there was an adequate, if forgettable, Ben Affleck movie. Affleck is good as the Man Without Fear, and Michael Clark Duncan is a scary Kingpin, but the film is too often derivative of other better comic book movies, resulting in a frequently inconsistent tone. The 2005 Fantastic Four and its sequel have benefited greatly from the recent reboot in that we can now say, yes, they were onto something back then. Director Tim Story's films aim for a family-friendly action-comedy approach that very much fits with the Fantastic Four. The problem is that the first movie in particular feels very small, almost like a prelude to a bigger, more complete story that never comes. Rise of the Silver Surfer is a smidge better than its predecessor, and certainly larger and more exciting. But the Surfer himself is an uninteresting cipher, while the depiction of his boss, Galactus, is one of the most notorious disappointments for fans in superhero movie history. A disembodied cloud? Really?
Come on!
The first X-Men movie was an important step forward for the genre, proving that crazy and diverse superpowers could be depicted well. Sure, 15 years later the film's seams are more apparent, but it remains as effective as ever in its depiction of Professor Xavier's family of mutants. Plus, casting the at-the-time unknown Hugh Jackman as Wolverine was one of the best things that could have happened to the then-fledgling series. The second solo Wolverine movie scores big, not just because it adapts the character's classic Japan storyline, but also because it smartly avoids too much X-Men baggage. The haunted Logan is given an exciting adventure that, if not for the giant robot shenanigans that mess up its third act, might rank even higher on this list. First Class was just what X-Men needed after the disappointment of The Last Stand and Origins. Almost a complete refresh, if not reboot, the charismatic cast of Michael Fassbender, Jennifer Lawrence, and James McAvoy revived the lagging series just as the actors were about to break out as major stars themselves. Director Matthew Vaughn's stylized period approach also brought a vitality to the mutants that has buoyed the franchise ever since. Whereas the Phoenix storyline was botched in The Last Stand, this film proves that the X-Men's classic tales can be adapted for the screen well. While many of the details of the comic story were necessarily changed, the spirit of that time travel adventure remains intact. Director Bryan Singer also managed a continuity wipe that makes sense and positions the series to go on to bigger and better things from here. After the success of the first X-Men, Singer was given a bigger palette to work with in X2. The result is a smart and emotionally resonant film that's also got some great action scenes and some cool new characters, not the least of which is Alan Cummings' Nightcrawler, whose bamfing invasion of the White House kicks the film off in style, just as the climax and apparent fate of Jean Grey hits us as hard as a tidal wave, even to this day. Is it any wonder then that they're bringing these characters back in next year's X-Men Apocalypse?